How's it going, guys?
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm really sorry for being late. My train was delayed an hour and a half, and London times are crazy times.
That's no problem at all. I know I would have preferred to have said this before the show started, but the only thing I would ask of you, if you could be kind enough, please, just to mute your microphone when you're not actually speaking, because otherwise it affects the call quality. So please do that. But nice to have you. You were coming back from Leeds today, yeah?
Yes, I was.
And what was happening in Leeds?
Basically, I had some meetings, etc.
Okay. Do you recall, I'm sure you probably recall meeting Aaron in Dublin. I don't know whether you would have recalled meeting me in Dublin.
I don't remember recalling you, I do apologize, but I do remember meeting Mr. Aaron Ra.
It was perfectly normal for people to recall Aaron rather than me. Don't worry about that.
True.
What I was hoping to have done before the show started, if you had been here, is to set out the way I was hoping the program would run. And it's effectively this way. I think there is probably a great misconception about what Islam is, and particularly amongst what we are likely to have here, which is a major sort of like American audience. So I was going to invite, if you would be kind enough to do so, you to give basically an idiot's guide in 5 or 10 minutes or so to what is Islam, what does it mean to be a Muslim, what do you actually believe in? Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, which basically means in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. That's how Muslims start usually when they talk. Essentially, Islam for a Muslim is, we would argue, acceptance of reality. And what that means is that we have good reasons to believe in the existence of a divine being. And we have various argumentation for that, something which I would like to discuss today if we can. Some of the arguments we do pose are a refined version of the Kalam cosmological argument, and also a refined version of the teleological argument, also known as the argument from design, but based on the fine-tuning of the constants of the universe. From that, we show there's good reasons to believe that there is a divine. Following that, we say, well, there's an awe-inspiring moment here. If there is something that's metaphysical, if you like, that brought the universe into being, fine-tuned all the constants in the universe, then that's an awe-inspiring moment. That surely maybe he, she, it, whatever you call it, has communicated to the rest of the world. Now, that's an assumption. But even if we remove that assumption, and this is what happened to me when I converted to Islam 8 years ago from a secular humanist background. My dad's like a humanist philosopher. I essentially was looking at the concept of God in different traditions, and also looking at certain revealed texts. Now, many texts do say, you have to believe in blind faith. Believe in this book because it's about faith. Believe in this book because I tell you to. For example, the Bible in Timothy, it says, this is the inspired word of God because it's the inspired word of God. There's a circular argument here, which is a well-known logical fallacy. But with regards to the Quran, for me...
I'm really sorry to interrupt you, Hamza. We can deal with the arguments about whether people should believe in the Quran. I was hoping more for you to explain what it is that you actually believe. For example, I suspect that people have a difficulty in distinguishing, for example, Allah and Yahweh. Why is it, what's the difference between, for example, and as I say, we're talking probably, I suspect, to a largely American audience who are going to be familiar with Christianity. What is the difference between Islam and Christianity?
Oh, excellent. I do apologize. First and foremost, I think the difference is in the conception of God. Generally speaking, the Christian narrative is based on an anthropomorphic view on the Creator. However, in Islam, it's purely monotheistic. What we say, there's an Arabic term which is in the Quran, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِ شَيْءٍ, there is nothing like him. So the theologians and the theological philosophers in the Islamic tradition concluded that the Creator has no resemblance from the material world. Something what we would call immaterial. So when we view God, we actually see him within his oneness and his uniqueness. There's an Arabic term called ahad, and ahad basically means uniquely one. So essentially the main difference is that we believe that the Creator is uniquely one with regards to how we worship Him. So we don't require God's Son, we don't require a book, etc. We also, when we seek for His help, we don't require any other intermediary. That's a very important point with regards to Islamic worship. Another point.
Can I, again, I know that we're restricted on time, and I apologize if I seem to be interrupting you. But can we deal, for example, with specifics, which I think will be helpful? For example, I presume that you believe in that the Earth was created. Yes.
Yes, we believe the whole universe was created.
And I'm not sure. I mean, for example, let's take an analogy with the young Earth creationists in America. Do you actually put an age on or a date on when this happened?
No, we don't.
You don't. So right, okay. And again, simply, for example, most Christians would, for example, be familiar with the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Is that a part of your belief system? Yes,
that actually is.
Okay.
That's a Quranic narrative.
Okay. And again, Noah's flood, for example, is that something that is referred to in the Quran?
It is referred to, but it's different from the biblical narrative. It wasn't a global flood.
It wasn't a global flood?
No, we would argue it was a local flood.
Right. And again, are you able to put a date on when that happened? Sorry, I can't. I don't know. We seem to have lost audio from you at the moment. Sorry, I can't.
I can hear you slightly, but you're breaking up.
We seem to have lost audio from you. Oh, I think what you need to do is actually mute Blog TV. That would be helpful. I think you're going to get echo.
Slightly, but you're breaking up. Okay, 1 second.
I think what you need to do is actually mute Blog TV. That would be helpful. I think you're going to get echo.
Slightly, but you're breaking up. Okay, 1 second.
I think what you need to do is actually mute Blog TV. That would be helpful. I'm hearing this 3 times now. What's going on?
Yeah, we heard you the first time, DPR. Shut up already.
Okay, okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, that's much better.
I do apologize.
I mean, what I'm trying to seek to understand here is, for example, again, sorry, I don't know whether you heard the last question or did answer it. If you did, we didn't hear. Are you prepared, like, for example, Harold Camping is, are you prepared to put a date on the incidence of this flood, for example?
No, I'm not. Right. I don't see why I have to.
No, I'm just curious, because obviously Harold Camping does feel confident to put a date on it, but and again, just
there's a strategy here. See, with regards to the Quranic narratives, what Muslims believe. See, there's 2 things here. The reason Muslims affirm the stories in the Quran and the narratives in the Quran is because they would argue they have good reasons to believe the text is from the divine. That's the first thing. The second thing is, we don't view the Quran as a solely specific book. Even the Quran itself gives a strategy to view the Quran. There are general verses and specific verses. So with regard to this context, the story of Noah, the date has irrelevance to the communicative effect of the text. It's trying to teach us what lessons are you going to learn from such narrative. So this is how Muslims would take it. They would take it in a more of an existential sense, rather than a sense of, okay, well, we have to know the date, we have to know his beard length, we have to know what color his eyes were. I mean, this is totally irrelevant to the Quranic.
I understand that. I just wanted to make sure that was the case.
Yeah, sure.
And I know that the other people on the panel are keen to contribute, but if I may, there are 2 questions that I want to raise. And I think because obviously you are wanting to express the message of Islam, there are 2 issues, particularly in this country, and you and I live in the same country, so you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Sure. There is a general feeling that Islam and Muslims do have a propensity to discriminate, for example, against women and, for example, against homosexuals. And I'm sure that's a criticism that you've heard before. How do you respond to that?
Okay, this is a very interesting question, a very valid question. It's something that we have spoken about publicly on our blogs and in our talks that will go up and down the country and up and down the world. First and foremost, let me address the particular part on homosexuality. See, the Islamic tradition is very clear, like other traditions, that the public manifestation of homosexuality is regarded as a sin. However, to discriminate a particular person for whatever reason is not in line with the Islamic narrative. The reason we say this is because the Quran always talks about aspects of justice. Even if you disagree with someone, even if you, for instance, people hate you, you cannot use that as an excuse for you to swerve from justice. And this is mentioned in the 5th chapter in the Quran. Now, so there's the essence here. However, Muslims feel very strong about their religion, very strong about their faith. For them, it's not just a faith, it's a worldview. It's the glasses they put on their face with regards to how to see the world. So they would say, yes, homosexuality for them is a sin. It's an immoral act. But now to actively discriminate to the point where you're going to be aggressive and violent, this is fundamentally and totally forbidden.
Well, I think that you've actually conveniently brought it on to and this will be my last question. I'm going to pipe down after this, but you put it on very nicely onto my last question, which was in relation again to the justice and Sharia courts in particular, because obviously, as you're aware, there are Muslim tribunals that are operating in this country. However, in other countries, we hear of Sharia courts.
I'm finding it very difficult to hear at the moment.
Sorry, okay, let me say it again. We hear in other countries of Sharia courts that are imposing, for example, penalties of the stoning to death of homosexuals or adulterers. Is that something that is in the Quran? Is it something that you approve of? Okay,
first and foremost, stoning homosexuals is not in the Quran. However, there is a criminal punishment for the public manifestation of homosexuality under an Islamic state and under Islamic law. However, the majority of Muslims, Saudi Arabia, and including Iran, is not an Islamic state and doesn't carry Islamic values. Now,
so what's the punishment?
Let's just be clear about that then. Sure. So you're saying that the implementation of Sharia law cannot justify the stoning to death of a homosexual or an adulterer. Is that what you're saying?
I don't understand the question.
What's the punishment? You said that they only get punished if they make a public display. What's the punishment?
Oh, to be honest, I don't really know what the punishment is, but there's a range of opinions amongst Islamic orthodoxy, and I think they're already available on the web.
Yes, I looked them up. All 4 major madhabs of the Sunnah sect advocate the death penalty, and they don't specify stoning, but it is the death penalty.
Yeah, but before we move on, only to be fair to Hamza, I want to know: is he saying that those Sharia courts that impose the death penalty for such things are not actually acting in accordance with the instructions of Islam in generic terms? And if not, does he actively oppose such stonings to death, for example, for homosexuals?
So because you're breaking up, I'm going to try and repeat the question, what I've understood from the question, okay? So are you saying to me the Islamic Sharia courts in Britain are not following the Islamic narrative on the punishments of homosexuality?
No, sorry. I'm not. Let me try again. I'm sorry if your internet connection is bad. In this country, the Sharia courts that do exist do not have jurisdiction to make such judgments. But we know that there are other countries in which Sharia courts operate, and the penalties that they impose include the stoning to death of people. Do you approve of that, and is it in accordance with Islamic law?
Okay, very good question. Now, what we have to actually get a really clear picture about this, what we have to understand is first and foremost the philosophy of crime and punishment in the Islamic narrative is based upon the deterrent effect. That is like the absolute last structure of the Islamic social model. Underneath that, what we argue is that we don't have an individualistic view on society. For example, we wouldn't consider ourselves as liberals, for instance. then we will try and propagate the good life. In liberalism, as we know, Professor Will Klimmaker says that you can't propagate the good life. So we actually have an advocation of what the good life is. From that, we have extremely, almost impossible criteria for you to get caught. Let me give you an example so you actually know this. I'm not trying to make this sound apologetic in any sense. I want you to understand the true, what the classical scholars have said about.
I'm sorry, and I know other people want to talk, so I do want to press you on this point specifically. I didn't ask that. I asked whether you approved of the stoning to death of homosexuals, and I think that can be answered in short form.
Well, I'll give you an example. If I asked you, are you an abortionist, yes or no, would that really give me an understanding of what you believe?
Yes.
I don't think so, because you probably have reasons for that. And for example, the reasons that I would advocate, for instance, any crime in Islam, if there is a judiciary, if there is the conditions in place which make the punishment to be inflicted virtually impossible. For instance, take adultery as an example. You need 4 witnesses to see the act happening in public.
I'm sorry, Hamza, you are avoiding the question. Let me press you again. Do you approve of the stoning to death of homosexuals?
I approve of the Islamic punishments in the various contexts, and if you ask me what the context is, I could explain it.
Well, try and... You're aware of judgments of Sharia courts where they have said that homosexuals should be stoned to death. Do you approve of that?
I don't approve of that statement, no.
Right, okay.
Because that's actually not even part of Sharia. Because it's actually public manifestation, when you're seeing it in public, do you see? That's why we don't pass judgment on individuals. Whatever happens in your home, happens in your home. There is no right in any of the four madhahib, the 4 schools of thoughts, that someone could go into your private life and tell you what to do. It's when it's the public manifestation of a particular act, which you don't even find in Soho in London, right? That is a different scenario. So the statement you made, I disagree with. No, we should not kill homosexuals, and we should not do any act like that.
Okay, thank you. Aaron.